Hi, Michelle Dockery is on Apple Plus's Defending Jacob. And if you know her from Downton Abbey, it's a very different role from Lady Mary. But also a mother and someone who is facing a family tragedy, perhaps. And I just want to ask you, I would say if people don't know you from like Godless or, Good Behavior, which were very different from what you do on Downton Abbey, this will really change their mind a bit about, who you are, what the breadth of your ability to play a New England mother with many issues of your life suddenly. So.
It's great to play, a breadth of characters, and I do have for some reason the last few years I've been playing Americans much more, and I enjoy it. I enjoy doing the accent.
Right. Well, I don't think you slip up at all in Defending Jacob, but I'm not from New England, so.
Yeah, but, I'm glad I didn't have to do a Boston accent, I have to say.
Yeah.
I would have found that.
Right. But basically, you're living every mother's nightmare in this, I think. And you go through the ringer quite a bit. But, I think it's a very rich role, and you have hit every note of emotion, I think, throughout the series. But, why did you want to do this particular series?
Well, each job is different in how you sort of connect with the character, and I feel like with this, I guess Laurie was, as soon as I began reading scripts, I think I read the first 3 or 4 initially. I thought, boy, this is going to be a challenge, and I do like a challenge. And I guess I was so enthralled by the journey of the family, and the what they go through, of course, as a result of this tragedy that they're all going through, and I think it was around the point where Vogel, when she begins to doubt in the scene with the psychiatrist, when Laurie begins to doubt her son's innocence, that's when it really began. I thought, oh, this is getting really juicy now. And I guess that's what sets them apart, Andy and Laurie. They both have their ways of dealing. Andy,
right.
Father, of course, played by Chris Evans. And Laurie, the way that they both deal with it is quite different. And I found that really interesting. And I think the show really touches on universal emotions of family and parents and children. I think that all parents out there will relate on some level. That they'll see traces of their hopes and anxieties in Andy and Laurie. And I thought that was really interesting. I think we're fascinated by human behavior, aren't we? And that's how well do you know your family? How far would you go to protect them? And that's something that I was really drawn to.
Well, there are compensations for you because you do have the gorgeous Chris Evans as your husband, and some great actors like J.K. Simmons and Cherry Jones and Jana Martell, who plays your son, and he's like he is that kind of adolescent that you just wonder about where they're going to end up in life and things. So
yeah.
But Now, you actually shot in the town where the actual locale is for the series too, and I just wonder, how they treated all of you, when you were there.
Very well. I loved Boston. I really enjoyed being there. We were shooting mainly in the suburbs, so I only really had time in the city at weekends. But what's interesting is that we shot it over, from sort of February, March, right through to the summer. So it was amazing seeing the seasons change actually in Boston, and it added, I think, watching back on it, it added something really cinematic. There was something there's a kind of grey tone to the show, and there was some quite eerie about some of those the scenes that we shot in the much colder months. It's a beautiful place. I really loved it. I love the people. My dad's Irish, so of course the Irish connection. I loved the whole kind of atmosphere there in Boston. It was wonderful to work there.
Yeah. But there's not a whole lot of laughs going on in this.
No.
And I think your character in particular, like, your husband's an assistant district attorney, and he's all involved in the legal process, and he wants to protect his son, and, gets this great lawyer played by Cherry Jones, and he's convinced of his innocence, but as you say, the mother starts to wonder just what's happening, especially when J.K. Simmons as his grandfather, who you just learn that your father-in-law committed a horrid crime, and there's this thing called the murder gene that comes up, and your trajectory, is very interesting. I mean, it's probably the hardest role I think probably anyone in the cast had to play.
Well, and certainly one of the hardest roles I've ever played in my career, I think. Emotionally, the journey of the character was challenging, and as you mentioned there, Laurie, she, it's kind of these things come, crashing down on her. It feels like every episode there's a new piece of information, and she's having to process this new information, particularly with J.K. Simmons' character, Chris's father, Andy's father. She begins to question, who have I married? And question her whole life, really, and her family. And she, in some ways you could say that Laurie, her coping skills perhaps aren't as well kind of rehearsed as Andy's. I mean, I think that comes from him having a difficult childhood. He has ways of coping that Laurie, she's very much a sort of heart on her sleeve type of person, and I think that she struggles, to eradicate any sort of moral reasoning, or and also these memories of the way Jacob was as a child. He wasn't an easy child, and she saw things that Andy didn't necessarily see when he was tiny. So of course she begins to question all of that throughout the process of this murder gene, which they're trying to rule out, which actually sort of opens another can of worms, really, in their attempt to rule it out. But it was a very challenging journey to play, for all of us, of course. But I certainly had to have some laughs in between. Like, I mean, when you said that just then, it just made me think of all the, the jokes and the laughs that we'd have in between takes, because when you're working on something like this, it is intense, and you know, Chris has a great sense of humor, and Jaden too, and Cherry. And so we were all, whether we were conscious of it or not, it was a great energy on set and atmosphere. And I think we were, it was a nice light relief sometimes, you know, just to have a giggle off set, just to make the atmosphere a little less tense at times.
Well, I have to say, I love the kitchen that your family had.
Oh,
like, I just enjoyed watching you in it. So that was a relief for me. But that was somebody's real home.
No, well, the interior actually was built entirely at the studios, and it was the whole floor. I mean, the design on the show was incredible, and I was in love with Laurie and Andy's home. Laurie is, you know, she's an art major, and she's very, you know, she obviously has great taste. There was great artwork around the house, and actually at the end of the job, I asked for a few of the prints, which I have. In my home now, but it was an incredible set, and that kitchen was like my dream kitchen, and we got quite bedded in there actually, because we shot all of those scenes over 6 weeks towards the end of the shoot, and so the three of us and Cherry, you know, we were doing a lot of those scenes, you know, every day back to back, and sometimes they were out of sequence, but nonetheless it really I think it made it seem that we were, I think it comes across as we're very sort of comfortable in that space. And of course it is a space that they have their privacy, which they are of course longing for now, because of, you know, their whole lives have turned upside down. Their house is their sanctuary, and so it's the moments when Andy and Laurie get to kind of really say what they feel, and how they're feeling about everything.
Well, you get to jog a lot, but not comfortably, because at one point you're being followed by someone. It gets very intense. But yeah, I don't know how many times you had to jog around the block. You know?
a lot. And we were actually, the jogging scenes, it was very, very funny, because we were meant to shoot them earlier on in the year, so it was meant to be during a much kind of cooler weather, and then we ended up doing it in 100 degrees heat in the height of summer. It's just the way that the schedule had to work. So I also had a stunt double, and we had to alternate, so that we didn't pass out. But of course these scenes they seem very short when you watch them back, and even if I watch it back, gosh, it really doesn't seem like I'm running for that long, but of course it takes a whole day, and you know, the different angles, and so we had to sort of take it in turns, because the heat was crazy. I mean, the crew were just, all of us were just absolutely boiling, and you know, everybody was encouraging each other to drink as much water as we could, and but it's always amuses me watching it back, and actually it seems like a tiny amount of time. But yeah, there was a lot of running. I got quite fit during those scenes.
Right. Well, I have to say, you know, other things happen to you, like you get waylaid by a reporter pretending to be just a regular person, and also, you know, other things happen to you just mentally and all that. But the scene I most appreciated was the grocery store scene.
Oh, yeah.
And you just feel for her, because it's July 4th. It's early in the morning, I guess. You don't think anyone else is there, because you know, obviously the publicity over the case is making you a target and things. And you decide, you know, to give into this reggae song, you know, don't worry, you know, everything's going to be all right.
You're right.
And you're filling your cart. You decide, oh, the heck with it. I'm going to put all the July 4th stuff in my basket, and we'll have a party. And then you look up and you see the mother of the dead boy. And it just chilled me and made me feel so bad for your character. Because she doesn't deserve that, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a powerful scene, and was one of those scenes where we, you know, when you read a scene like that, which you know has such an impact and is a powerful scene, there's of course an anticipation leading up to it. And we started shooting it very, very early in the morning because of course we had to shoot everything before the customers came, the real people come to do their shopping. And so it was important to kind of get it right in the short space of time that we had. And I did find that scene one of the most difficult, actually, because there is such a sadness to what she's doing. You know, she's waiting at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the grocery store so that nobody else is there and she isn't hassled. And you know, this song comes on, and I found it hard to actually lighten and be sort of light for a moment, and also knowing what was coming, because of course I knew she was about to you know, do what she does, as you see. And it was a very a scene where the emotions are changing constantly. So 1 minute she's quite sad, then the song comes on and she's upbeat and she thinks, right, I'm gonna pack this trolley with everything I want for 4th of July. We're gonna be normal. We're gonna have a normal family 4th of July. And then of course she's faced with Joan Rifkin. And I think that is the first time she's seen Joan since the shiver. So it's like she has no idea what to say, you know, and the guilt that she feels, of course. And I just love that there are no words in that scene. It's just, all she says is Joan. And then, of course, she replies with, you know, she spits in her face. And I just think it's such a brilliantly written scene. And it just says it all, you know.
I hope that was just one take.
It's interesting with those things, because I thought, what, you know, how are we going to do this? And of course, there is my wonderful makeup artist there, Tara Day, with a water bottle, standing very close to the camera, and she squirts it right at the moment. It's sort of, there's a lot of humour to all of those scenes at the same time, because of the way you have to do it. But I didn't have to do it that many times, thankfully.
Right. Well, I have to ask you one thing, because I loved the Downton Abbey movie. I was a little skeptical because, you know, it's been some time and all that, but I enjoyed it. It was just a great joy to see that and all of you gather again. But is that going to happen again? We'll see. I hope so. I loved getting back together with the gang, and we had the best time. So we'll see. I mean, it feels like there is an appetite for another one, which is great. But it really depends on Julian, of course. You know, I wonder if he's busy writing at the moment, and getting us all together again, because it was quite a challenge getting everybody together. You know, it's a huge cast, but I would welcome the opportunity. Well, thank you for talking to us, and please make a new Downton movie. I'll make some calls. Okay.